I think that rounds it up for me, and I'll be happy to hand over the floor to Marijn Gijsbers.
Yes, and tomorrow we're going to practice my last name together. So we have a very clever crowd tonight. So I guess you guys figured it out, right? You figured it out, right? I think Jan already mentioned it, actually. So we have 134 speakers, and we have a rather small audience. I'm sorry about that. Now, we were going to talk about the Mâha Chohan's letter tonight. So, of course, then logically I start with the speakers. And Tim told us in his talk this afternoon that things have really changed since 1875. So my first obvious question is, how relevant is this letter today? Very. Yes. The lady in the back with the beautiful hair, she would like to have a microphone. There's two ladies with beautiful hair, actually.
The letter is just as applicable today as it was in 1875. That's right.
I see people nodding around you. Could you tell us why?
Because we have not improved morally. And I think the idea of this letter is to encourage us to work with the community for moral improvement.
Thank you. So who would like to add to that or contradict that? Yes, there's a lady over here. More beautiful hair in the room. Over here, in the checkered shirt. And her name is Ella, I happen to know.
What is written is universal language, I think. That's a language we all can understand.
Universal language is language we can all understand. I'm sorry, I don't get it.
You don't get it. You must look behind the words.
You have to look behind the words. Okay, so what do you mean by universal language? What is that?
That is language that every man can understand. It speaks to the heart.
Okay. We can all understand and it speaks to the heart. Thank you. Okay. The microphone is being taken away from you. I don't know. There's another lady with beautiful hair. Wow. What would you like to say, Mieke? Oh, no? Okay, you have orders to... Yes, the gentleman over here with the beautiful beard. Good.
Okay, I think it's still alive because the recommendations which are inside are still very... we still need them. For example, when it says all of us have to get rid of our own ego, clearly, that's still the case.
That's still the case. So it's very relevant, you say. Thank you, Jacques. Yes. We need two here. Yes.
I think the sentence that I thought was very relevant.
Maybe you can turn around because most of the speakers are here now. Yes.
I think the sentence that I read that I thought was so relevant today still was where it says we have the we have the utter deformation of the intellectual principle, and the other unrestrainedly indulging its animal propensities, with the deliberate intention of submitting to annihilation, pure and simple, in cases of failure, and then to millenniums of degradation after physical dissolution. And the whole juxtaposition of the intellectual classes irresponsibly subjugating the ignorant masses deliberately. I think this is very relevant.
Because it's still going on. Could you give it to Tommy, who's next to you? Because I saw his hand going up as well.
Actually, I don't have the article in my hand, but when I was reading it a couple times in the past few weeks, I just recall the statement that has to do with the value of not so much making Theosophy a whole of a cult study, but rather putting the focus on universal brotherhood. And if we're going to do that, then really the study of the fundamental principles of the philosophy comes first, but more importantly, the personal application of those fundamental principles, such as compassion, which is what the whole focus of last year's lecture was.
Yes. Thank you. Jan Jelle. You don't have to run a lot. That's good.
Yeah. May I jump to this last speaker? One of the sentences I usually remember best is that where the Mâha Chohan is said to have said that the struggle for life is the cause of everything going wrong in humanity, and it is the cause of all crime. And to explain that to our common fellow human beings is very difficult, because most people, maybe 99.9%, think struggle for life is necessary. And the Mâha Chohan elaborately explains why it is not necessary.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Kiplagat.
Well, to complement the point he made,
Yes.
The great master further pointed out.
Could you please talk in that direction?
Oh,
yeah, great.
To complement what this gentleman, our brother, said, the Mâha Chohan mentioned that the cure for the struggle for survival and so on is a teach karma and reincarnation. Teach karma and reincarnation.
Yeah.
For they are, they are our future, saviors. So the question is, what does it mean to look at karma and reincarnation as, our savior?
All right. Yeah, excellent. Good point. Thank you. Please, behind you, Siglinde, and then we're going to move to the back of the room.
Okay.
Yes. We're going to go to Slovenia next. No. Siglinde, please go.
Oh,
yes.
I shall. Okay.
And can you also talk to the... Yes.
Okay, I thought maybe I'm talking loud enough so everybody
Excellent.
can hear me.
And we love to see you as well. Because of the beautiful hair, by the way.
So, now I'm losing my point if you go on like that. It's so easy, huh? Well, I think the important thing which I found in this article, you can find in this letter, you can find a lot of things in it, and you will find when you read it every day something else which is important. But this time I found that the major thing is we have to teach Theosophy. We really have to go public with it. We don't have to study it only for our own, but really to bring it to the people. And that much more than it has been done in the past. It is now the time that we have to go out. And if I look now at the article, he is there is also to be true religion and philosophy must offer to be true. Religion and philosophy must offer the solution of every problem, and Theosophy has to offer this solution. And this is what we have to show people in our own words and in our own lives. It's quite simple, I think.
So, all right, well, yeah. Thank you. To Slovenia, yes.
Thank you. I was reading this letter years ago, but reading it now I found a sentence, it was a shock to me. He said, 1881, I think, as we find the word now, and it is now, whether Christian, Muslim, or pagan, justice is disregarded, and honor and mercy both flung to the winds. It's still the same truth.
It's still the same thing.
Still the same.
It's very relevant.
Yes. And I have maybe another question to all of us. Who is Mâha Chohan?
Who is Mâha Chohan?
This is always my question.
Okay, well.
Because there is a sentence, this is why even exoteric Buddhism is the surest path to lead men toward the one esoteric truth.
What do you think? Shall we challenge the audience?
Yeah,
With this question?
I read many books and different opinions, but who was Mâha?
Excellent. Thank you very much. By the way, you've met already, or you've seen already Herman, and maybe the other two gentlemen of the audience, because there are only three, can introduce themselves when they talk. So who would like to answer this question? Who is this Mâha Chohan?
I can speak. Hello? You got me? Okay, I can speak to that. We don't know.
Oh, John. Who's John?
I'm John.
Are you sure? So why did you decide to take part in this audience?
Well, I am a student of Theosophy, but primarily of the Mahatma letters the past couple of years. And I've been looking at this letter, of course, for quite some time. It's a wonderful letter. It's very representative of the entire body of the Mahatma's letters. And I can give you quotes from several of the letters that reflect what the Mâha Chohan is saying here. But to who was the Mâha Chohan? We don't know his name. He didn't wear a name tag or anything. So he's kind of a shadowy figure, but it does point to the fact that there is a hierarchy. That KH and Moria had a boss, someone who helped direct what the activities were, and many times they had to ask the Mâha Chohan's permission. So basically you could just say it's their boss. We all have bosses. It doesn't mean that you respect the boss more than you respect your employee. It's a little bit a different sort of a hierarchy than you would expect. But in the world of the Mahatmas, there is definitely an order, and I think that's appropriate. A couple of the comments that were made, particularly the one about the two classes. Tim Boyd mentioned that in his talk this afternoon. On one hand, you have the religious superstition, the dogmatic side of the equation, and then on the other you have the science, the materialist science, the atheist science, and that's what they're basically positioning Theosophy between those two, that we need to bring it all together, and pointing out that neither one of them had the truth. They're very anti-religion in this, saying that religion is the cause of all of our suffering, including the fact that religion teaches this fear of death that was mentioned, and the thirst for life. So that's a big point that they make in this letter. Any other?
Thank you. Well, maybe the gentleman in the beautiful jacket. Who
Honesty and confession, the jacket is Garrett's, thank you. I borrowed it, thank you, Garrett.
He does look good, though, doesn't he?
So could you tell us very shortly who you are and why you decided to take part in this audience?
Gene, because they asked me this morning.
That's what happens, right?
That's what happens when you walk in, yes. I guess, and again, my goal is short, clean, and lean, right? Book 2, Secret Doctrine, who is Mâha Chohan? It's an improper question to ask. Simple answer, and then I don't know what the pages are here, but the statement is that was made about the ego. It's an illusory apparent self. So there is no person that is the Mâha Chohan. But the secret doctrine tells us specifically that, on the second line, that transcendent self that has come over from prior manvantaras that started the whole thing going in the second round as well as the third and a half is the chief initiator of the entire shebang. That power never dies. And for those that were fortunate enough to enter into this community, they get to know that power. And so that is one way of looking at Mâha Chohan according to HPB and the secret doctrine. And then there are those that present that power, who take on a form, and who interact more specifically with individuals in the world who perhaps our teachers have had direct access to. But they are very well aware of that lineage.
And it's that form that has a name. The Mâha Chohan does not.
Is that an answer to your question? Yes and no. That's really good, yes and no. So we have something left to think about, to ponder on. Okay, Herman, would you like to add something on perhaps why this letter is still relevant?
I should first say why I'm sitting here. Yeah? Okay, well, that is very simple. I twisted Jan his arm because I'm very much convinced already for many years that there is a blueprint in it. And I was always so surprised that I had discussions with other theosophists. Yeah, what do we have to do in the future, and what should we do, and what don't, and so on, and so on. And I always say, it is just there. The only thing what you have to do, read your blueprint and try to imagine yourself how you can implement it in your situation. That's all. Yeah. So for me, in that point of view, the future is not a dark something, but for me quite clear what we have to do there. So just do it. So to add a little bit on the question, for me the most important thing out of that is that there is hierarchy. So that means there is a structure in it, and that even the masters, in our eyes, very advanced, very well known, all the occult things and the teachings and so on, still have to follow the order of their boss. And sometimes he is also, of course, the chef or the boss or whatever. And they are not allowed to use certain occult power with his permission. For me, the very nice phrase that the old goat was eating his letter. Yeah. Yeah? And then he wants to do something for that ghost, and he wants to give him some new teeth, but it was not allowed. And the Chohan preferred to do it himself. Yeah? Yes. So that gives for me, nice talk you can say, but it gives for me a certain information that knowledge, energy cannot be used, let's say, without certain responsibility, and certain people having knowledge and power, but even not having, let's say, the permission to use it. So from that point of view, it gives me quite some information about the way of working. Yeah? Right. And on which line, vertical line, that point is, what you want to call the Mâha Chohan, I think by myself it is not that important as long as you realize that is the vertical line in it. Yeah? The Kuru Parampara rakes in it. Yeah?
Now let's just imagine that what Herman is saying, that there's some truth in there, then we would have to investigate, right? Now imagine that the Mâha Chohan indeed intended this as some kind of a policy, this letter. Then what would be the instructions, the most important instructions that he's giving us in this letter? Who of the speakers could say something about that? Yes, ma'am. René, right? Yeah. Yes. There's a microphone. And could you please, because the most of the speakers are behind you, could you...
Turn around.
Yes, we would like that.
Okay, I feel the most important line is the line that Jacques mentioned, all of us have to get rid of our own ego. It goes further on to say, to recognise our true self in a transcendental divine life. I feel he gives us a clear directive there, to recognise, to see our true self in a transcendental divine life. So to know who we are, I feel that's the first and the most important step. And it goes along with the Eightfold Path as well, the right seeing. So if we know who we are, first of all, I feel the other will fall into place. So I feel he gives that directive loud and clear, and it was that line that really stood out for me.
All right. Thank you.
May I follow up on that?
Yes, please.
The next sentence after that is one of these pieces of advice that the Mâha Chohan gives us in this letter. He says, we must strive to make other people see that truth. to recognize the reality of that transcendental self. So there's two things there, to recognize it in yourself and then to help make others realize that as well. Not in a dogmatic way, not preach that you're not you, you really have a higher self without them understanding for themselves what we're saying. It's more a matter of sharing that or demonstrating that. So that the trick is getting people to ask you, why is that? That's to me, the most effective way is to engage in conversation, begin to be a better listener, listen to what other people are saying, and then suggest that there may be, that we may have to get rid of our ego. And I don't mean kill the ego, I mean just perhaps make it subservient to the higher self, or make it, or surrender to the higher self, perhaps, which is a very bhakti way of looking at it.
All right, thank you. Cool. What else comes up in this letter? What stands out as what could be an instruction? Over here. Erwin, and could you also please turn around at the rest of the speakers?
Yeah, I really like, in connection with what was previously said, the sentence that there is hardly a theosophist in the whole society unable to effectually help it by correcting the erroneous impressions of the outsiders, if not by actually propagating himself the idea. So there is a task for all of us. That's the message I get from this. And it also reminds me of something which
before you go there, could you help us a little bit by rephrasing in your own words what you just said?
Well, that there is a task for all of us.
And what is the task?
That means that all theosophists, as theosophists, will get the opportunity to spread theosophy.
Get the opportunity.
Oh, they will, yeah, and they will, and are able to take the opportunity also.
All right.
Yeah. So that's for me very. I mean, as theosophists, we are sometimes almost desperately looking for how to preach this. But if you're just living and having this idea in the back of your mind all the time, the opportunities are everywhere, and so that's really very optimistic. Yeah.
Opportunities for what?
For telling people about theosophy.
For telling them about, okay. All right, so, but I just heard
about
John
preaching, popularizing theosophy, even as he calls it.
Sorry that I interrupt you. Yeah. John was just saying we have to let people come to us and ask. So I'm getting more confused now, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess that's always a balance, of course.
Okay.
I mean, one of the first things I learned is that preaching theosophy without someone ready to listen is not preaching theosophy.
Okay.
So,
all right.
But that's. I mean, you also should be there. At least, I think we still have a lot of work to do to at least make theosophy as a concept known to a really large part of the world. So
they go hand in hand with each other.
They go hand in hand with each other.
Excellent.
Yes.
There was one thing you wanted to add that stood out for you, I think, right?
Yeah, well, it also reminded me of something which I read in The Voice of the Silence, which says, find him who knows less than thou and let him hear the law. So there is always someone there if you're open to these opportunities. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Now I have two mics. That's really good. That feels fantastic. Yes, I will give it to you. Jan Jelle.
While Erwin was speaking, I was thinking about the headquarters building of the Theosophical Society in Amsterdam. It is opposite of the road is a school. And in the staircase of the school are windows. And they have an inscription which says, zo doe je dat. That's how you do it. So the teacher is showing how it has to be done.
Very nice. Thank you very much. I would like to go a little bit to the back of the room. because it's getting warm in here and we would like to keep you on the tip of your seat, we would like to add something. Yes.
A good point we can add is that if they ask us to spread Theosophy...
I'm sorry. I just remember I have to ask you to stand up because they will really take me apart, the camera people, later on tonight if I don't ask you. Thank you.
One good point is that if they ask us to spread Theosophy, they probably believe that people is ready to learn, that there is much people ready to learn it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Much people ready to learn. That's hopeful. Yes. Raphael, I think, right?
So something that I was thinking about this is that I think the letter is talking a lot about not only staying in our saloons and halls talking about Theosophy, but finding ways to help others in a real way. And we can think about the TOS in that sense. That's the tool that we have to help people. But if you think about the teachings, I think something that's very, very important is how to make all this knowledge, all this teaching accessible. And I do think we still have some work to do in terms of making this accessible to everyone, because as we can see in the profile of at least most members that I know, they normally are very well-educated people that manage to self-study a lot and read very complicated texts. So I think how to make it accessible to all kinds of people, young people, people that are not so well educated, that cannot have so much discipline to read so much. How can we make this accessible for all? I think that's still a big challenge.
All right, that's a good point. Thank you. Oh, yep. Joanna, I should say. Could you also please stand up and...
Can I react on that?
Thank you.
Many of you already heard it, but we have thought about it as well, many years. And we came to one conclusion. Use all the difficult theosophical terms as much as you want and think you need to, but every term in theosophy you have to be able to explain in a Buddhic simplicity. We call it Buddhic simple. And that is not childish, that is not simple, that is Buddhic simplicity. And last night we talked about the word logos. Can you explain the word logos to one who doesn't study so much and doesn't know the word? If you know that, then you can explain theosophy. You can answer every question. If all our higher ideas can be put in Buddhic simple words, and that's quite hard work to do that. Many years you have to train that, but it works, it really works. We talked about wealth and poverty in the world, and we had a lecture and we talked about life atoms, and people who are poor are not poor at all. They are lacking their own younger brothers, their life atoms, to be able to live and to lead their lives. And we made one simple word: when you are unnecessarily rich, you kidnap others' children. And now no one forgets what it means to be rich or poor. Yes, when you are very rich, you don't need that richness. Those life atoms are not yours. They're of others, and they cannot live then. So we kidnap other one's children. And we have very rich members and so on, and they are always laughing and saying that. They never forget. So try to find Buddhic simple terms to explain things, and that's your answer.
Thanks. Yes. Is that what you were referring to? Yes, please. Yes, please.
I think another comment that I didn't make before. I think that's so right. We have to find ways to make it accessible to all ways. So we can use all the complicated language, I guess, if if the person is able to, but also have this other possibility. And something else that I find very important, that's not in the Mahatma letters, of course, this one, but I think it's a very, it's very present now, is about media. It's very difficult to see, or I don't see at least, a lot of media using direct theosophical teachings that are well produced, in the sense of having a production behind. We record everything, that's great, but what about doing something more sophisticated in terms of media? That's something that I also think could make the teachings accessible to people, because today, if we cannot make a documentary, YouTube and internet, something that can flow into the social media very easily, it's difficult to access a lot of people, in my opinion. So I think media is a good thing that's not in the letter, of course. It's not something from his time. Maybe he would say, why don't we go to very poor communities and help them to understand life in a deeper way? But then today we have this kind of new media that can help us so much in this direction. Why don't we use it more? That's my reflection.
Good point, thank you. So you use modern technology to reach out and to educate. Yes, in the back.
Lao-Tse once said, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And that single step is being mentioned here in let us understand each other. I think that is what this meeting here all boils down towards. Because the reason that we are here is so important. It's the first step, the awareness that we need to listen to each other and understand each other. Maybe that is one of the first steps we need to take for the future.
That's a very promising, I think, I like for this meeting, for this convention that we have here together. Nicely put, thank you. Who else? Yes, in the back once. No, in the back once more. The lady who was in front of the gentleman with the beautiful green shirt, I may say.
I totally agree with you, but I think it starts with, do we know ourselves? Does not start with coming to know what we are deeply inward, what we are really deeply inwardly. So to know oneself, because we are talking about giving something to the world. But can we give if we lack real wisdom?
Can I ask you a question, ma'am? Because a number of years ago, I had the pleasure of going to India and going to a Kala Chakra initiation, and I was accompanied by a Buddhist monk who was pretty high up in the hierarchy, the Dalai Lama. And he ran a monastery in Paris, and he told me that his biggest wish had always been to spend half a year or a year somewhere in a cave alone, to investigate his mind, to get to know himself. And then just when he thought the time had come that he would get the time off to go there, Dalai Lama sent him to Paris.
That's why I agree with him. It goes together.
It goes together.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit on how that works? And so what do we need to do to get to know ourselves?
I think we need awareness to, well, it's all consciousness, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, for me, that goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Just let me ask you, is it in the cave or is it in the monastery in Paris?
No,
or is it?
No, let me say, I live here in the compound. So I meet many people. Yeah.
That's a good answer.
I meet many people.
All right.
But I also need to be alone and to investigate, to ponder over, to read, to study. Really, not to read, but to study.
Now I understand what you mean. That's how they go together.
Yeah.
So you interact with the outside world and then you go back and you ponder and you reflect.
I sometimes have the feeling we are so, hoe zeg je dat vlug? Quick to think that we have to give something to the world. Yeah? But we have to investigate if you are already ready really to give to the world. Because in the so-called outside world, there are many people more wiser than I am.
So you have to do your homework, you're saying. Hank was here, over here, please.
And
was
then,
it, and then we, yes?
After that, can I ask the speakers a question?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yes, one of the things which struck me in the letter was, in fact, the last paragraph, the closing. In fact, for me, that was really a golden key to public work. That why are people, new, young, interested people, interested in theosophy? Because somehow you can show that you can solve real, for them, important problems. Problems of life, the universal problems of life, of course, of life and death, etc., but also modern day questions which arise, etc. And I think that is so clearly expressed that when you succeed in that, the people will react. And that means that when we do not succeed in showing the people the practical value of theosophy, then they will not react. So it is really a kind of, I think for me a kind of keystone of cornerstone for our public work. That
people have to see that it works, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, true. And also, of course, you need a lot of work to try to get your own insights in theosophy so clear that you can give that answers. I mean, that is something which never stops. And one of my hopes is that we will do that together.
All right. Can I ask you just one question?
Yeah.
Because you say, then if you see that it works, now how would you know that it works? Theosophy works. How does one know that?
Then I think that is so easily to see.
I know it's another dumb
that
question.
Is so
That's what I'm here
easily
for.
to see. That needs, I think, no.
So what do you see then? What do you mean by it works?
Well, people say, "Wow, I can do something with this."
All right.
What do you expect otherwise?
Okay, so you give a lecture and then they say,
come
"Wow."
back, or they.
I didn't forget Eugene.
I know you
Okay.
did.
Where do we go first? First in the back, and then we go here to Arend, right? Yes. Sir, please.
I spent 50 years in the classroom, not teaching theosophy. I can see what I'm trying to teach my students over 50 years, whether it begins to work or not. And I believe this is true with theosophy, that a sign that it begins to work is that they can do what I'm doing themselves without me.
Nice. Very nice.
So that if the person is picking up something that is, let us say, theosophical, they begin on their own, whatever the level is, to actually think, speak, and act theosophically. In many a case, without even really knowing the word theosophically. That's not important.
So it's not about the word, it's about the behavior and the attitude.
And they can do it themselves. And you see it.
Excellent.
And that shows that you have succeeded in pointing the direction, and they are moving in the direction at their own pace.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to Arend here first, and then we're going to go to the gentleman over here. And then we're going to go to Gene, I hope, somewhere.
May have gotten lost.
For me, one of the important observations of the letter is that the Mâha clearly stated that their initiative was not for the Theosophists, but was for the world. Having said that, and also in combination with your example of this monk, it's important that we reach out to the world. At the same time, we can only do that if we have enough wisdom and to do so. And this is one of the paradoxes that we are facing. In my experience, there is a big tendency within our organizations, or at least our organization, to really focus on this more or less internal search for, what word shall I use, inner quality and a deeper understanding, and forgetting about the message of the Mâha Chohan, that actually the initiative was not for us, but for the public at large. But at the same time, our own understanding is often lacking. So that's a kind of a paradox. We need to reach out, but at the same time we are insecure. Are we wise enough? Did we have enough understanding to be able to reach out? And then, of course, the next step is, do we have the right communication? That's another question. But that paradox of the obligation to reach out, as mentioned in the letter, and our own quest for more understanding, and that's a kind of a contradiction and paradox in how should we focus our attention, how should we use our energy, so to say.
But that's a very interesting point you bring up.
It's always a debate.
Yes.
I mean, the monk had to go to Paris. He could not go into his own mind and study. His task was somewhere else. So where's our task? At this moment, at each moment. How should I spend my time and energy tomorrow? That's a question we all have to face, I think. What are our priorities, given what's written in the letter?
Excellent. Thank you. We're going to go to the gentleman over here. Yes.
About these teachings, Theosophical teachings, I remember in '83 I was in DR, and in a small meeting with Radha after the big meeting. Many of the members of people who are there, we spoke with Radha about this same meaning. I remember I asking a question: how is possible to go to the people with these theosophical teachings to the heart?
Yeah.
And Radha said to us, first you open your heart, and you don't have problems. This is the question. We are ready to open our hearts, or we are afraid? Many of us know so much Theosophy. Many of are persons who are studying many years. But how many of these members are open the heart? For me, the cue is there. The intellectual is part of this. So we need to study.
What you're saying is, once we open our heart, we're ready.
But if you want to open your heart, you need to change your structure to afraid. All these kind of conditions, prejudice, all this, you need to work in this line.
Yes.
And in this moment, you are in condition to open your heart without any kind of problem. All time you are protect to us. We give a very good teachings, good lectures, but this is only words. Only words. The people here say, oh, good. Create a good structure in the lecture. He spoke about the many writers, but only this, only mine. We need to go to the heart, but first we need to open your heart. And this was very strong work. It's not easy.
Yes. Wouldn't it be great if we would have like 2.5 days, 3 days together, that we can open our hearts to each other? And then go out into the world?
Why not?
Why not? Let's do it. But we have 2 or 3 days. We do. Yeah.
You know,
that's a fantastic opportunity. Yeah.
It's easy, but you know, many of us have afraid. You know,
yes.
All of life are protected about the other people.
Yes.
We are like a big walls around to us. We know so much, but we are protected. This is not easy.
We cling to our egos. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I promise to go back to Gene. Do you still remember, Gene?
Oh, yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right. So
the question, and it doesn't really require an answer, but more reflection, and that is, as I sit and I try to wrap my whatever around what's being said in light of the letter, is there any real difficulty in truly looking at the nature of that which gives rise to mind and that fools us into thinking that we are separate as egos, even from the point of view of head and heart, while we're working in the world? Are they really paradoxes and differences, or have we missed something more simple that is also reflected in the letter that would allow us to, if we had the courage, severely analyze our natures to the T while we are working every day helping others, some teaching, some sharing, some sacrificing, while we are looking at the common source that has given rise to the heart as well as the head, based on this letter? Is that impossible? So that's just my question in light of the letter, because sometimes I admit I'm crazy, but I don't really see that as contradictory or difficult. And then I would also ask, what is it that we're really seeking when we look to go to a cave for 3 years, 7 years? Some of them were under retreat, strict retreat, for 7, 10 years, 12 years. Do we know what they were doing? And would we have the courage to do that? And do we have more opportunity to do the very same thing while we are here in the world, dealing with all of the chaos at the same time? To me, that's the amazing opportunity that we have. And in my craziness, I don't believe that you need the cave in that sense, or that the ego can withstand true analysis, or that there has to be a difference between the conception of ego, or head and heart, because in the end, it all arises out of that same source that our teacher said we are. Not who we are, what we are. That's all.
All right. Carlos.
I just will go back a little bit about where we take the theosophical message. I think that one of the best places where we can take the theosophical message is to the academic centers, universities, and centers of higher learning. We have had the experience to create a theosophical group in our university. And then the faculty of the university noticed that those students that went to the theosophical group improved tremendously in their performance, academic performance. So they were asked, well, how have you improved? We have been trying to make you perform better, and we failed. They said, well, we learned to improve ourselves in the Theosophical Club. Well, the faculty recognized that, and now Theosophy is part of the extracurricular official activities in our university. So I think working with young people, now formally you show to the faculty that Theosophy really works. As you were saying, it works because it works, and it works. And they know it works. And then the students, since they are studying either sciences, philosophy, or what have you, can compare what they are studying with the theosophical principles. If you can, there's somebody who can guide them through these studies. So I propose to you, many of you are involved in academia as we are, that one of the best places to start to spread Theosophy is in the institutions of learning. It could be upper high school, it could be already universities, it doesn't matter, but it will spread like fire because the students start to make sense, oh, I'm really studying environmental sciences because of this, and that. They see the morality of science. When they study, when they combine science and Theosophy, they see the morality on the scientific work that they are doing. So
Carlos,
that's my comment.
Carlos, do you realize the consequences of what you've just said? You're going to be a very busy man the next couple of days, I'm afraid.
Well, that's what we are here for. We are here to move forward, right? So that's what we are going to do. March ahead.
Excellent. Love to hear more about that. Yes.
For me, the main point of the letter of the Mâha Chohan is that we not should keep Theosophy for ourselves, as in another letter is written that the Theosophical Society was not founded for the individual, for satisfy the individual aspirations of the members. Do I quote well? More or less. More or less. But it's not for the individual aspirations of the members of the society. It is the first thing, it's that Theosophy is for the whole world. Not for a few, not for a happy few, not for poor, not for rich, for everybody. That is the main message, I think, of the letter. Then, of course, if you want to spread Theosophy, you have to study. But you have to study and you have to live it, of course. But there's so many millions who don't know anything about reincarnation and karma. We all know that. We don't have to explain in the first place the difficult teachings about the rounds and the root races, etc. But the simple things, reincarnation and karma. And if you get questions and you don't know them, well, you're going to study it, you're going to talk with your friends, you can find together an answer. But the first thing is to spread Theosophy, I think. And the second is to study, but study with the purpose to spread it. That's what I read in the letter of the Mâha Chohan.
And then what you say about it is start simple, with the basic things.
Edwin told already, in the Voice of the Silence, seek those who know less than you. We have to be honest with ourselves. We know just a few things. Theosophy is an ocean, it's a universe. What do we know about it? Just a few things. But there are so many people who still know much less than we do. And we have to find them. And to spread Theosophy doesn't mean to teach the technical teachings. I think the challenge is to apply the teachings in a way we can show the people that because we apply the teachings, our own life reaches a higher level. And by doing that, you can apply the teaching on all kinds of issues. For instance, we had in The Hague an issue about the brain and consciousness. But you can have an issue about the poverty in the world. We have to solve all the problems. The Mâha Chohan says that Theosophy can solve all the problems of humanity. That's a challenge. And we have to study, of course. We have to try to imply all those teachings and all the fields of human thought. That's a big challenge, but we are able to do it. We can do it because we have the Theosophy with us.
Thank you.
I think all of this is a very, very big challenge. Because if we spread something we don't live, we are just making propaganda. And the people are full of propaganda, all religions, all in commercial interests. People don't want this. People want truth. People want to see by themselves. Then we need to spread what we live. Then Theosophical Society is the place where you learn teaching and teach learning. We are not the people who knows to teach the others. No, we are all learning. But this kind of learning needs to be connected directly with our comprehension and with our lives. Because in spite of this, we just stay as another organization trying to have more people and making propaganda, and this don't touch the heart of anyone.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes, please. Yes.
In the very beginning of this letter, there's a statement that we must preach and popularize a knowledge of Theosophy. And when I read this, that word preach grated at me. I didn't like that word, especially in the context of India in the days of the Christian missionaries. And I thought more about it. I said, well, what better word could he have used? Here I'm going to put words in the Mâha Chohan's mouth. They brought an interesting quote from St. Francis Assisi. He said, preach the gospel at all times. If necessary, use words. So I agree, Marcos, with what we need to do is not set out a bunch of propaganda, but show people how to live Theosophy. And you've read theosophical books, right? You've gone to classes, you've gone to lectures. Do you think that what you've learned has all been on the intellectual level? Hasn't it affected you in other ways, in a deeper way? A way that was talking about opening our hearts. Haven't your hearts been opened? So when you walk out of this hall and you go out into the world, that's where you preach Theosophy, perhaps without words, just by being who you are, who you've become since you've been studying Theosophy. And don't be afraid. You know, we often have that fear that, oh, I'm not sure I know what I'm doing, so I better not say anything. I'm afraid I might send somebody astray. You're always going to make mistakes. All of us, even the Mâha Chohan would make mistakes. So don't be afraid to not act in the world simply because you're afraid you might make mistakes. Let's open that heart and when you walk out that door and be a theosophist. That, I think, is really what he's trying to get us to do.
Can I ask you, you've been studying this letter for many years. You've heard quite a few, let's say, instructions, or I think you used the word marching orders somewhere in time.
Yeah.
What are you still missing?
What am I still missing?
That you found in the letters that you haven't heard yet.
Well, I always find something new in the letters as we study them.
And you're the right person to ask.
I think sometimes we get a little arrogant as well, thinking, oh, I've read the letters, I know. Be careful. And we talked earlier today about listening. I think that listening is every bit as important as preaching, as he said. I also found a little thing in a blog about, this is from a woman who was an evangelist. She was saying, the biggest problem I have with evangelizing is that you can't enter into a relationship with a prescribed intention, that it stands in the way of listening well. You can't listen well when you are carrying an agenda. You can't listen well when you are looking for ways to fortify your own position. You can't listen well when you are searching for what is broken in your conversation partner in order to introduce a solution. That's preaching. That's not what Theosophists should be doing. And another thing I found was a quote from HPB in one of her letters to Synod that answers this problem I have with the word preach. She said, Theosophy was founded as a nucleus for universal brotherhood. So was Christianity. Don't let us do as the Christians do. Our society was established to bring together people as searchers after truth, independent thinkers, one having no right to force his opinion on the other or meddle in his religious views. So if we go out there and we're listening, but we have our heart open, we engage in conversation, and perhaps we're preaching without using words. We're, listening and say what, and in that way, you probably don't change a person overnight, but you make them think. You make them wonder, well, what is this guy talking about here? And in a sense, that's not what organizations do. Organizations have lectures and classes and so forth. But you walk out the door, what do?
Thank you.
But John, I think organizations should do the same.
Yes, and they should help us.
If they don't live what they teach, it is no use.
You're right.
So Herman, you more or less started this by saying, I think it's really simple. It's all there. It's in the letter.
Yes.
So what?
Well, there's okay. Well, no, I'm still stand behind my statement. Let's make it a little bit more clear. You should first realize that you are only able to get from that letter what you have developed in yourself. So that means something. You are not able to recognize beauty if you have no beauty developed in yourself. So that is something what you should realize. You are not able to teach to other people what is not living in yourself. No, what you not live by yourself. We call it in the education lectures resonate. So that means that if you try to bring some knowledge to other people, that knowledge should be in yourself. Otherwise, you are not possible to transmit that. So that means we have to work on ourselves. But the best way of working on ourselves is working for the other people. Yeah? Because the motivation to make it more clear, when I give a lecture and I see that people don't understand it, my first reaction is, what is the reason that I was not able to bring it more clear to them? Not, what is the reason that the people don't understand it? They have not the right background or so. No, you have to go to yourself. Because if you understand the teaching, you should be able to bring it pure and simple. That's all.
Now, when we get to Monday, yes, please.
In addition to what has been said, I like the word marching order very much that John is using, because I think this problem of are you already able to do something, or do you have the right to tell other people something about the wisdom that Theosophy is? I see very clearly in this letter of the Mâha Chohan that he says that the purpose is the self-sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead on the right path our neighbor, and then it comes, to cause as many of our fellow creatures as we possibly can to benefit by it. So whenever you have some possibility by the right behavior without words or in whatever way to show, explain, tell, shout, whatever way, to show something of this inner wisdom that is the inheritance of every human being, then you should try to follow this. It is an instruction. It is a marching order.
Joop, in the microphone, please.
It is a marching order.
Thank you. Yes, we go to the back to David.
Notice in that quote he uses the term lead, and I think that's a key word. Instead of preach, let's lead. Let's be leaders. Leadership is a quality that we should be developing in ourselves. And that means we have to be a little fearless.
In listening to all this, two thoughts have kind of arisen in my mind, which are, I just want to share them. I don't know if they relate directly to everything. One, with this gentleman talking, the old saying that to live the life is to know the doctrine. So it seems we're here as organizations. The organizations are equipped, to go out there and reach the public in a broad way. But each day we walk out our door, individually, we have our opportunities. I think that's what we're talking about, our own self-development to touch others. And in that regard, someone was speaking earlier, and HPB's comment, I think, in The Secret Doctrine came to mind. I just wanted to share that. I think it goes, she says that, tell a man there's such a thing as an ocean who's never seen water, and he has to take it on blind faith. But show him one drop of water in his hand, and he can intuit the rest for himself. And so I think the ocean of theosophy, we don't have to put out the ocean all the time, but meet people where they are and give them that nugget of theosophical thought that might lead them on. So, and we all have the opportunity to do this, so I think that's a great thing for us.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now yes, Jacques, one more? It's coming from here.
I think there is another recommendation on this letter which is very relevant to the today period. It said that it should enforce its theory, the theosophical theory, by direct inference deducted from and corroborated by the evidence furnished by modern exact science. It's interesting because the theory have not changed during the last 130 years, but the science has greatly improved, and there is probably a great opportunity for many more bridges between the two. And as it was mentioned, if we can reach to the academic world, that would be the best way and the very efficient way to really teach theosophy.
Thank you. So things have changed. Yes. And then we go to the front here.
Yeah. About the word preach, I've been reading this phrase the last few months several times, and I discovered that it's not saying preach theosophy, it says preach knowledge of theosophy. And there it connects with the idea that the Theosophical Society was founded to make known to the world that there exists something as theosophy. So we are not preaching a new religion, we show the world that theosophy exists.
Thank you. Judy, over here.
Yes, good evening. I taught religious studies on the college and university level for nearly 40 years. And the problem I found with reaching to the academic world is that academics, especially materialists, and I mean mind-body materialists, are among the most difficult to convince that there is such a thing as spiritual knowledge. And also, I had a great deal of trouble with students who wish to label me. Well, what are you, a Catholic, a Methodist, a Jew, a Buddhist? We have to know. And I said, no. I think that in the mystical core of all religions, there is a great truth. And I found that if I could find some spirituality, and you would find it in every student who was really, truly, perhaps following a path of Islam or Judaism or Buddhism or independent spirituality, just try to fan it and grow it. But I found among my colleagues the most difficult, the academic materialists, and they would not really care to listen at all to theosophical ideas. And sometimes, I think the simple believing person who may believe in a personal God, but is doing the good work, helping the poor, or having a ministry to people with AIDS, as it does the Episcopal Church in San Francisco, these people are doing good work and work along with them. I mean, recently I helped the synagogue open their doors to the homeless in San Luis Obispo, and I help them with some money and bags of groceries. And we do this. And I want to say that the editor of the academic magazine Novo Religio, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but she asked me for an article about this meeting, which I will be very careful about writing. But I know Dr. Catherine Wessinger, who is a Southern lady. You, Betty, remind me a little bit of Catherine, and she is very aware that Theosophy is not just one of the other cults. because Novo Religio is dedicated to the idea that there are not only new expressions of the, quote, older religions, such as Islam. There's very interesting articles about jihad movements in Islam, etc. But they have articles about, Scientology, the so-called New Age religions. But, Catherine, would like to have a short article about the news about us. But this will reach an academic audience. And many of the academics think that we are, quote, off the wall. And, to try to straighten this out is difficult. Novo Religio alone is not going to make it. But I think Theosophy is as Theosophy does. And each of us who conducts themselves in a manner toward others, which is open and compassionate, like, you need help, I'll give you some help. I mean, not in a blind way, certainly in a way of karuna, discriminating compassion. I think this says more to the world about what divine wisdom is than any other practice. But of course, getting to the intellectual leaders is good, but the academy does not have much influence. I am sorry to say, because there are many who are good people. And I've said enough, so thank you.
Thank you. But we're going to do two more. Kim Jio over here, and then we go to the back there. So over here. Yes.
I just want to ask here, how many of us have learned Theosophy in any academy or any university? I think that is a question of structure of the mind. We learn how to structure our mind. And here comes to the picture always the dichotomy between mind and heart. It is so tiring. You see, in some languages like Chinese, Vietnamese, mind and heart has the same word to say, meaning it is in the core of anything. It is the core of the mind, it is the heart. So I hope that we don't use too much with the separation between mind and heart.
That's a very nice sense.
And I hope also that at a certain moment, there will be less and less people saying, I am not of the mind, I am of the heart. It is easy to say. To go beyond the mind, one has to have a mind. Otherwise, what to do? Beyond what?
Something to think about. Thank you very much. We go to the
No,
back.
no. I have three things to say.
3 things. Sorry.
And I will keep silence later on, because otherwise I will forget. The second thing, it is to share with you a story, true one. When I used to travel in Ukraine with Maria here, you see, here. We met a man, at that time it was Kohlberg, not Maria. We met a man. He came very, very proud. He said, Madam, I have read the Secret Doctrine 7 times. I said, oh, is it true? He has broken all the records I have known so far. So I said, oh, you are an expert now. What do you say if you meet somebody in the street and the person does not know anything about the doctrine? And he asks you, what is karma? What did you say? He just stared at me, flabbergasted. Are we capable of looking at everything, study everything, learning everything, and assimilate all things, to render it with our own words, and say, now I have completely assimilated? This is just a question. And this gentleman has really reminded me of this necessity of assimilating. Now the third one, and I will stop talking after that for tonight. I would like to come back to John's intervention just a while ago about 2 things. It is just to tease you, John.
That's fine.
You said you don't need to kill the ego. Use it. It is a kind of deal with the devil. Don't don't hesitate to kill the ego. It will come back as temptation. And you have the occasion to do it another time. Second point, there's a kind of hinting that Mâha Chohan is just the essence of wisdom of all times. I said, why do we exclude the possibility of Mâha Chohan taking a human form? Because everything is possible. If you say it is just that, meaning that you are eliminating one possibility, the possibility of giving a human form, giving out and spreading out essence of wisdom. Because the form which will be the manifestation of such a being like Mâha Chohan, this form is not usual form. It will be apt to express the highest wisdom that we can know. It is just to say this, and it is a supposition. I am not saying that he is in a human form, but everything is possible because he can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments on your first point about killing the ego. If you kill the ego, you won't be talking to me right now. The ego is what we use to communicate with each other. It's a wonderful tool. Some people equate that with mind as well. That mind is a wonderful tool. But I don't want to differentiate it from heart, but there's something behind that, more powerful than that, that's who you truly are. And that person is not named Kim Ju, but it's who you truly... That's right. So I'm not... John is speaking right now, but John is not who I am. There's something that I hope to surrender to, not my will, Father, but thine, that is far greater than John is. And I pray that, that John will benefit by listening for that still small voice, the voice of the silence. So I think I mentioned that. What was your second point? I've lost it.
Well, maybe we can let it rest here, because I'm going to have a big trouble with another lady with very beautiful hair. This is not a lie. If her spouse comes home very late tonight, and that's really true. He knows what I'm talking about. And there's a gentleman in the back who's been very patient. No, it's a gentleman over there. Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to add just a real brief comment about, from a Western marketing perspective, I really see three different things, very briefly. The first is the content. The letters, the secret doctrine, everything that we have, everybody here I think agrees is what Western marketing again calls great content. Above that, and to add to the young person who talked about the social media and using present technology to get it out to people who might be interested, is more of the packaging. But above that, and I think the most important part, and I'm encouraged by what's was said earlier about bringing the different organizations together. Branding is probably the most important thing from a Western marketing perspective that can be done to make this available to more people. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I hate to do this because I know that the quality of the dialogue is really good now, and we're really into it, and there's a lot of people who want to say something. But I just have one final question to wrap things up. And you, sir, I will give you the first opportunity to speak. The question is, what can we take out of this letter when on Monday we want together to have a Naarden declaration? Is there something you could say about that? Then think about it a little bit. Who would like to say something about that? That's what we're working towards these days. A Naarden declaration. Yes, over here.
Is it on? That if some way, somehow, unless some way, somehow, we don't figure out and recognize, not make up, but recognize as a consensus what the master's program is, then what's the Naarden Declaration for?
Good point. All right. Who? Okay, yep.
Perhaps an answer to your question. I only realized that I had been listening to theosophical teachings after I had been listening to them for about 3 years. The first 3 years I listened to them in the university. The word theosophy was never used. Then after that, I began to listen to them at the ULT. Nandini Iyer was always teaching theosophy at the university, but she never used the word. And at this point in my life, what I learned at the university without that word, what I learned at the ULT with that word, with, for example, Nandini, there's no difference. So that we can do the same thing with this letter. It's a question of adapting to the audience and speaking in a way that the audience is able to deal with. But the teaching itself can be expressed in many, many ways. This I'm convinced of. Nandini is an example that I would give from my own background.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to your audience, who've been very patient, by the way, tonight.
Yeah.
Some final words from you, gentlemen?
Well, there is one point I think that was not too much under attention, that if you read in that letter that the Lao-Tse will make quite clear that there is no need to bring Theosophy in a theosophical, how do you say that, form or institute. Because he say that more or less if we reach out to the other religions and we are able to bring there back the original knowledge and the original ideas what the religion mean, then I think we do also a great job. We have in The Hague experience with Islamitic people and bring them back to the deeper roots of their religion was giving a great effect. So, and the Lao-Tse is make it very clear. He's not searching or wanting a new theosophical church. He wants to have to spread the truth. And that's all. So, the form is not important as long as the teachings and the knowledge is coming forward. I think that is the thing we have to focus for.
Thank you. Final words from Eugene?
Oh, me? Yeah. Diversity is wonderful. I mean, I sit here and trust me, I hear a lot of people all day long, and I'm always trying to integrate and hear what's being said and what's not being said. And the wonderful thing, which is also the problem, and it's not really a problem, is that there are so many different points of view. And I always try to think about the 7 principles, and Tim had mentioned that this afternoon. And so when I think of 7 times 7 times 7, and there's 300 plus principles acting, and each individual is expressing an aspect of a principle. And to me, this letter is a brief summary of the secret doctrine, because there are so many things in here, whether we're marching orders or just picking one. That means that we can do anything. The only difficulty that I think might arise is prioritizing what needs to be done and who's going to do it, and trying not to say what can't be done, because usually that then ends up into one forcing an agenda on another. So for me, the beauty is the freedom. The beauty is that there are 1,000 things in this letter that are important, if not more, and that if anyone picked anything to do, simple, comprehensive, mystical, it doesn't matter, it's working for theosophy in the world. The difficulty, again, is appreciating that the other's work is not ours, and embracing that. And that's, I think, what ITC is about as well. Recognizing the differences, not saying one is right, one is wrong, one is better, one is not as good, but as the teachers also said, let each one do their work and let that work be its own fruit. And so I would hope that whether we're here, whether we're back in our own lodges, whatever we can do for the world, that we just appreciate what each other is trying to do, encourage that, support it as much as we can, and continue to do what we know we were born to do. And in that way, if we can still keep that nucleus there, everyone is bringing back fruit. And as it's been said so many times, we don't have to say Theosophy, but if the core is Theosophy, when we come back home at the end of the day, we know we've been demonstrating Theosophy. Yeah, we used a different language. Yeah, we spoke to different people. And sometimes we didn't speak at all. But when we come back, we touch that touchstone and we rejuvenate with the same ocean of wisdom. And that's what I see, and that's what I hear, and my hope is that we don't fragment even here, because again, there are so many wonderful differences.
Thank you. John?
My hope for this conference is that we as organizations, as societies, or even local lodges, learn how to facilitate some of the things that the Mâha Chohan is telling us we need to do. Most of what we've talked about this evening has to do with us as individuals, but this conference is about us as groups, as organizations. And I don't want us to come out of here with marching orders that disregard the differences between our organizations. To take words out of the Dalai Lama's mouth, I hope that each of us become better ULT fellow students, and each of us Adyar people become better Adyar Theosophists, and so forth. But we learn how to share techniques and so forth together to facilitate our members and ourselves as individuals. That's how the organizations can be effective in preaching and popularizing a knowledge of Theosophy.
Thank you. So, plenty of time to continue our conversation tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Thank you very much. Good night. See you tomorrow.